In this video, we will be learning demand and supply. Now, a quick note. Demand and supply are the foundation of economics. Every market and every industry out there functions on these basic fundamentals and principles of demand and supply. Hence, it's important that we understand these concepts thoroughly before moving on to the more difficult part of the subject. Now, you must be wondering, what is demand? To put it into words, demand can be defined as the willingness and ability of a consumer to purchase a certain good at a particular price in the market. Now, when we say demand, we refer to the individual consumer demand. That is the demand of one consumer. Whereas when we say aggregate demand, we refer to the demand of the entire economy as a whole. Now, there's an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and the price, and this is also known as the law of demand. The demand for a certain good can be represented on a demand schedule, which can thus be used to plot a demand curve, as we will see later on. Now, as you can see on the left, we have the demand schedule. Over here, we can see the quantity of chocolate bars demanded at different price of chocolate bars. So at a price of $5, two chocolate bars are being demanded, and at a price of $4, four chocolate bars are being demanded. Now, what does this tell you? This shows that as the price of chocolate bars reduces, the number of chocolate bars demanded is increasing, which thus proves the inverse relationship between demand and price. As we can see on the right, here is a demand curve. This shows that these two variables are inversely related to one another. So as the quantity of chocolate bars demanded is increasing, the price is reducing. Now, why is the demand curve sloping downwards? As I explained earlier, this is because of the law of demand, which states that there is an inverse relationship between quantity demanded and price. Now, as the price of chocolates increases, it becomes more expensive for consumers to buy these chocolates, and hence the quantity demanded for chocolate bars reduces. And on the contrary, as the price of chocolate bars decreases, consumers can afford to purchase more chocolate bars because it's cheaper for them to buy more. Hence, the quantity demanded for chocolate bars increases. Now, there are different factors which affect the demand for chocolate or any other good or service in the market. And these are the price of a product, income in case of normal goods and inferior goods, preferences and tastes, price of substitute goods, price of complementary goods, and number of consumers. Now, before we move on, we need to understand the difference between a shift in the demand curve and the movement along a demand curve. As we saw previously, there are different factors which affect demand. So, logically, this would either lead to an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. Now, a shift in the demand curve occurs when there is a change in a non price determinant of demand. That is, for example, if there is an increase in income of consumers, then the demand for a certain product will increase, and this will lead to a shift in the demand curve. What this is essentially telling us is that for the same price, more quantity of a good is being consumed in the economy. Now, a shift outwards or a rightward shift in the demand curve means that the quantity demanded has increased, whereas an inward shift or a shift to the left means that the quantity demanded has decreased. As we can see in these two diagrams, in the diagram on the left, there is a rightward shift in the demand curve. What this is telling us is that for the price of $12, there is an increase in the quantity demanded for the product from 80 to 115 units. Whereas the diagram on the right shows us a leftward shift in the demand curve, which means that for a price P1, the quantity demanded for that product has reduced from Q1 to Q2 units. A movement along the demand curve occurs when there is a change in the price of the good. So if the price of chocolate bars was to reduce from $5 to $4, then there would be a movement along the demand curve for chocolate bars to show the increase in demand for this decrease in price. Now, a downward movement occurs when there is an increase in demand and a decrease in price, whereas an upward movement along the demand curve occurs when there is a decrease in demand and an increase in price. Now that we've finished with demand, we will move on to supply. Now, supply can be defined as a producer's ability and willingness to produce a certain quantity of a good at a certain price level. Just like with demand and aggregate demand, there's a difference between supply and aggregate supply as well. Supply refers to the output of a particular firm or a particular producer, whereas aggregate supply refers to the total production of all the firms and all the producers in the economy. Unlike the law of demand, the law of supply states that there is a direct relationship between quantity supplied and price. On the left, we have a supply schedule, and from which we can see that as the price of chocolate bars is reducing, the quantity of chocolate bars produced is also reducing. And this can be proven by the graph, which shows a direct relationship between these two variables. As the price of chocolate bars is increasing, so is the quantity of chocolate bars produced. Now, why is there a direct relationship between supply and demand curve? Because as the price is increasing, suppliers can earn more profit by selling their product, and hence they will increase the supply of the good. Whereas as the price reduces, suppliers are going to earn a subsequently much lower profit from selling their good, and hence they will decrease the supply of that good. Now, there's a special case, a special phenomenon with respect to the supply curve, which is the vertical supply curve. This occurs under very special circumstances. What basically happens here is that the quantity supplied is fixed, or it is the same for all price levels. Now, the examples of a scenario in which this may happen can be seen with stadium tickets. As there are limited number of seats in the stadium, hence irrespective of the ticket prices, the quantity of seats cannot be increased just like that, especially in the short term. This diagram shows a vertical supply curve. So as you can see, the quantity supplied is fixed at Q. So irrespective of the price, that is the maximum quantity that can be supplied of the respective good. Now, as we discussed with demand, there are factors that affect supply as well, which are price, cost of production, technology, taxes, subsidies, and supply shocks. Right. So with that, we come to the end of this lesson. I hope you found it interesting. And in the next lesson, we will be exploring these concepts in much more detail. Thank you.